Hey there, everyone. Welcome to another Wildwoods beekeeping chat. Thank you for dropping by. So tonight, as the title and the thumbnail says, we're gonna be talking about splitting and a little bit about swarm trapping. So tonight's gonna be a fun night. So we're just gonna talk a little about that. So I just want to go and welcome everybody. Hello, Ron. Welcome. Thanks for watching. Kinera, thanks for watching. Thanks for joining us. Because tonight's gonna be a fun night. We're gonna be talking about swarm trapping, split making, because right now this is the biggest time for doing this. So thought I'd go over the basic methods for doing splits and swarm trapping and all these different little things that you can do towards that. So that's gonna be something fun to talk about because it's swarm season, right? I've been doing a few things lately, working on different projects and all these different things. So because like splitting right now, especially for us down south. Down south is definitely a little time for splitting once the temperatures get right. Because you see, right now let's just say it's kind of getting a little more chillier. So right now you don't want to split because down here it's around like 60 something high, but it's gonna be warmer in the near future. I hope so pretty soon because colder weather is, the bees are not going to be flying. But today the bees were flying. It's about 65 degrees. So right now the high was 67. So it was pretty unusually warm, or not really unusual. It's kind of lower because we were aiming around 75, 76 degrees Fahrenheit, right? So it's just kind of flip flop. Kind of get to different points in time where it kind of goes up, kind of goes down. So But welcome everybody. Hope you and hope you're gonna enjoy tonight's stream. It's gonna be fun. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and click the like button. That'd be good. So first, I think we talk about what I'm doing right now because there's a lot of things I'm doing right now. I'm trying to prep up for this spring bonanza because we were talking about that a few weeks ago about the spring prep and everything that's going on. We need to be ready for this stuff. If we're not, then it can jump at you and say, "Ooh, we got to split now." So we're gonna have to go ahead and talk. We're gonna be talking about that tonight. It's gonna be a real fun night. So first thing I wanted to say was my some updates because I've been not uploading as my last video is about 5 days ago. It's been a little bit since I did a video. Because I usually try to upload every few days, but I've been real busy getting things ready. You got some 1 gallon buckets because we're gonna start doing some 1-to-1, a little bit less than that for sugar water feeding. So, I've been getting that ready because, feeding right now is one of the important things. So maybe we'll talk about that in the near future about, 1-to-1 feeding, 2-to-1 feeding, all this different stuff that, you can really talk about in, order to get your bees prepped up for the spring. But right now is a good time for feeding 1-to-1 sugar water. Sometimes people like to do 2-to-1 sugar water for the bees to store food, but 1-to-1 sugar water is good for getting the bees ready to mate. That stimulates the queen to lay more eggs, right? So that's what I really want is more bees, baby bees, which means I need a good laying queen. And I need to get the queen stimulated to lay more eggs. So the more I do that, if I feed 1-to-1 sugar water, it will do as I intend to do and make more, bees. So I'm feeding 1-to-1 sugar water. I'm going to start using 1 gallon buckets. So I believe that's 10 pounds. I'm not all that sure. So that's what I'm going to be feeding. So it's just going to be something simple, 1 gallon buckets. Some people do like to do 2 gallon buckets. But 1 gallon buckets will do you good. That's all you really need. The highest you'll need. So, it just all depends on your current stance. What do you want to use? Just depending on what you like to do. So, 1-to-1 sugar water may be good for you. 2-to-1 sugar water may be good for you. But sometimes people do a little less, like light sugar syrup. That's what I'm kind of doing. A little lighter, just a touch. It's not 100% 1-to-1, but it's a little less. But it's still good. However it is, it will still get the bees to stimulate the queen either way. But the 2-to-1 will kind of get the bees to store up that food. So but swarming season, yes, it's definitely that time of year. We're gonna talk about swarm trapping, baiting, swarm trapping. I got to still set up some traps, but I'm gonna teach you a few things. So maybe if you already know about swarm trapping, split making, maybe you can earn a little more info out of that. So first, let's go ahead and demonstrate this one little thing real quick. So this is a split. It's a basic split. So say you have one standard single deep, which is the main hive. Your main hive is going to have 5 frames, usually 5 frames of brood, 2 frames, about 4 frames, 2 on each side of food, stored food, pollen a little bit. So that's the middle there. So what you'll do is you'll divide this up, and your split's going to go down. You're going to have 3 frames of brood in your split with 2 frames of food. Then you'll have 3 frames of empty comb, non-drawn comb. You can do some drawn comb, but you don't really have to. So you'll do is you'll put those empty frames there. And then in that split, you may want to put a frame feeder or feed them however you want. So if we minus that frame feeder, it'll be 2 frames of empty foundation, 2 frames of food, 3 frames of brood, or a little bit of eggs, because just in case if the queen's not in there, because you want to make sure because the queen, there's no queen here, right? So this is the split that you're going to do. You're going to make sure you have some eggs so they can make a queen. Your old hive, you're going to put 2 frames of brood along with the queen with 2 frames of food, or brood, actually, sorry. For a brood in the middle, food on the side, and empty. So this is a real simple method that you can do if you want to make it real basic. So say if you're just a beginner beekeeper, maybe you just want to start out small and kind of grow up a little bit, that will be good too. So if I have a beginner beekeeper on here, this is one of the basic methods you can do. It's basically, if you're going to do a walkway split, it's kind of similar, but walkway split, you'd have 2 deeps, take 1 deep away. It's like if you have a double deep, you can split that double deep up, take 1 deep away. It doesn't matter which one it has. One of them is going to make a queen cell. Just make sure each walkway, or 2 deeps, whenever you split the hive and make 2 deeps, 1 deep, each deep have to have eggs, just in case if one of those deeps don't have a queen, and you'll have some eggs so they can make some queen cells. So this is a real basic method, and we're going to get to some other ones, which will be like the Damari method, is just splitting different things up. And along with that, those 3 frames of brood, you'll want to make sure you have some brood like this. So your 2 outside brood frames, you'll want about fully capped brood. Your middle frame, you see how this one has a little outside brood. Then in the middle, there's eggs. So you want to make sure you have eggs in each split. And then whenever you have food, you want a little capped honey, and you also want a little pollen. Pollen's important because you need a little pollen in your split, so that's gonna be something important to take note of and do as well. So this is like a real basic method, and I've talked about it over the years, and this is how I'm kind of making some queens, naturally queens. The bees will make their own queens, so it's basically the same thing. So it's real simple. It's a real simple method, and I think many beekeepers can use it, such as myself, other beekeepers, maybe even beekeepers who are watching it now, can use this method for splitting and doing that kind of thing. So this is the basic method. Many beekeepers know it, so I just wanted to bring it up, talk about it for a quick minute or two, to talk a little about it on our live chat that we usually do every Monday night. So anybody, if you don't know, we do these live chats every Monday night. So just remember that it's very fun to do this kind of thing. It's very fun to talk to people and be able to do these kind of live chat things. So I appreciate you guys for watching, and supporting. It's something to really do appreciate. But this is a basic method. I'm going to go ahead and click out of this. So that's the basic, real basic. Many beekeepers know this method. So it doesn't surprise me if many of you know that method. It's just a real simple method. Just splitting that up, taking some brood frames, putting them in the middle with some outside food, and that's basically it. So now, before we get to the next one, I just want to talk a little about why do bees swarm, because many of you know what bees swarm, but for people who don't, basically, this method right here resembles a swarm, right? It resembles one. So then once they say, oh, the old hive has a queen, the other hive doesn't have a queen, they'll say, okay, we already swarm. So that is an artificial swarm. You're basically doing the swarm for them, but you keep the bees and you don't have to lose all those bees, right? Because what that does, you can take one half, take it out, and take it to two halves, and that's basically it. Okay, got a question? Do you leave the permanent half? Yes, please, thank you. It's original location. How far do you put the other half? Okay, now I was about to get to that. So the parent half, that basically it's the original half, right? I'm bringing it up here so I can explain. So original half, you're going to leave it in its original location, right? You're going to leave it in its original. So this is your basic hive. It's already done. You got everything there. Take it, the parent hive right here, up on the top there, and then you're gonna leave that one where in its original location. Then what you'll do is you'll actually the old split. You'll put it wherever you want. I'd put it a little bit farther because sometimes make sure you put enough bees in there. That old split needs to have a lot of bees because some of the old bees will fly back to the old hive because they know the old hive is where it's at. So make sure you do spread it out a little bit, but I don't really spread it out that far. So to answer your question, just a little bit, not too much. Don't worry about don't worry about that too much. But do spread it out. You don't want to put it right beside it, or sometimes a lot of the bees will go back to original location, which in turns they always will, because the old bees will remember. The nurse bees won't be able to fly back to the old hive because they're nurse bees, right? So that's why you want to use brood frames because that has a lot of nurse bees, and the nurse bees will stay at the new split hive, which is on the bottom with some feed in it. So to answer your question, Ron, just a little bit, not too far. It doesn't really matter. To me, I do like to spread it out just a little bit, just because that lets me know that because either or never, how far you put it, the old bees will usually return. You just have the only way you'll be able to not let them return is you have to take it like 3 or 4 or 5 miles away from your bee apiary. If that's not a trouble if you have a lot of acres or a lot of bee yards. So it just all depends, right, on what your current stance is. If you have, like me, 40 acres, you probably can move them just a little bit off ways and do that. So that's just basically a way to answer that question. So real quick, before I carry on, I want to discuss another thing along with making a split. You have to make sure you have a good drone mating. So what I'm working on is I have a plan in action. I'm hoping to do pretty quick. So what my plan is to do is I want to move half of my apiary with some good hives with some good drones. I want to move that whole hive like a mile away from my original location because we have 40 acres, right? So then we can actually move them about, say, a mile away. So then you'll have some good mating. Because sometimes if you don't have good mating, a queen will only mate with one drone, and then after that, then the drone, all that stuff in her for her to lay eggs will kind of go down, and eventually you won't have a good laying queen, because you want a good laying queen. That's one of the main things. So sometimes whenever you have a queen and she's not laying good, it could be something different, but main reason could be that you don't have good drone mating. So, just watch that. Good drone mating is key to doing that, right? You have to have a good. So sometimes what beekeepers do, they'll have a drone flooding yard. So they'll have one apiary with hives and the other apiary with hives. So then drones can go back and or queens and drones can go back and forth, because what the bees will do, and the queen will go out about a mile and a half, a little more. But the drones don't go that far. So then the queen won't mate with her brothers. So then that'll be inbreeding. So that's how the queen's got it all figured out. So that's why you got to kind of spread it out. So then you will have some good drones mating with your queens. So a mile away, maybe a mile and a half. Sometimes you can do 2 miles, and then your drones and your queens that'll be good for queen mating. That's just one thing that's important for queen mating. You know, it is an important thing that I've been thinking about, and I was thinking, oh well, I do need to get some good drone mating because if I don't, then my queens may wear off. I don't want to sell. If I do sell mated queens, I don't want to sell any bad ones, or I don't want to have any bad, non-good mated queens, right? So we just got to keep that in mind, and kind of do a little thing. So I got to move some hives here soon, and now the thing I've been thinking about is what timing. Timing is a key to moving beehives. So I'm hoping to take that and future master beekeeper, hoping so. But that's kind of for drone mating, because drone mating is key for having a good laying queen, right? So, but that's drone mating. That's what I'm working on, right? I need to have a good drone mating source, so then the drones won't be so I won't have a bad queen, because sometimes queens only mate with one drone, like I said. So then she'll be a great laying queen for maybe a month or two. Then she'll wear off and she won't be no good. So make sure just to have a good mated queen. So and that will be key for that. So that's drone mating into simple split. Now I want to get to the next one, which should be this one right here. This is the Damari method. So the Damari method is a method that's commonly used, and the thing for this is that you don't have to take a queen away or really anything. What you're doing is you're splitting up, removing the queen, removing the queen from a lot of her brood. So that resembles that they're in a tree. They have very few comb. So you have your standard hive here. So say you have 2 deeps, maybe a super or two, or you can use 4 deeps, and I'm going to kind of explain that here soon. So you'll do those 2 deeps, you'll rearrange that right there to the one that's on my right. So what that will be, so you'll do is the bottom, well, with a queen excluder, we'll have the queen, 5 frames, actually 4 frames, sorry, I can't really see that good, along with a lot of empty frames. Then you'll have 2 supers or a queen excluder below the supers, and then on the top you'll have your deep with 8 frames of brood. See, that's a lot. And that's something I've been trying to wrap my head around this method for a little bit. I think the last few weeks, and I finally kind of figured it out. So what this do is once the bees are in the tree, think about it. Once they're in the tree, what are they going to do? Well, they're in the tree, they don't have much things. So then down here, the bees will have to draw out more comb, and then that kind of resembles a swarm, kind of. It's a little different, but there's another method to doing that. So if say you have 2 double deeps, you'll do this exact thing right here. But what you do is instead of this, you'll remove those 2 supers and take off that queen excluder, put a deep there, and put the queen excluder right below the top deep that you see. So that's another way to do it. There's many different methods for doing the Damari method. You're just Damaring and doing different things. So what will happen is once you have a big old hive, once the little baby bees hatch out of those cells, another nurse bee or a little older bee will come back and fill that up with honey. And then what will happen then is the queen will run out of spaces to lay in. Then there you go. That's how that has a cause for swarming. That's something big that can happen. So you gotta watch out for that. Something that I wanted to talk about tonight. It's definitely something big is swarming. Because yes, swarming is something that happens all the time, and splitting is one way to prevent that. But let's just say I want to notice this right now, that bees are bees and they'll kind of do what they want to do, right? So you can't really sometimes once you split a hive, they'll swarm multiple times. It's hard to keep a colony from swarming more than once, because if you have a real strong hive, they can split multiple times if they want to. But sometimes the ideal time is what will happen is just one swarm. And that's what will usually happen, right? Just one swarm, that's about it. You don't, it's just, I don't know really, but sometimes you can't have more than a swarm. You can have about, let's just say, so I think the most you can get is about 5 swarms that I have. But what you can do, if you have a double deep, you could divide that in 4 sections, and you have 4. Make sure they all have brood. You have to rearrange the whole colony. Make sure one half has the queen. The other 5 frame nukes will have no queens in them, but will have eggs so they can draw some cells out of. But lucky thing for us down south, sometimes we don't have to have the strongest. We don't have to take a lot of bees in that little split. You do want to have a good number of bees, but you don't have to have as many bees as you would up north, right? Like my split that I made, I need to put some more frames in there because they're only supportive of a frame or two. So I need to put a little more, maybe never frame brood in there, a hatching brood to make that kind of bigger, So, just another way to do that. But, that's just another method, the Mari method. But, But we're gonna talk about in a second we're about to start talking about backyard swarm trapping, split making, all this different stuff. So first, how I another thing of splitting and swarming, controlling swarming, I know a lot of people do, is they'll set a swarm trap, bait it with some kind of swarm lure, and then put it in their own apiary. So maybe they'll have a chance to catch their own swarms. But I know one thing what a lot of beekeepers will do, they'll accidentally catch wild swarms that come into their own apiary. So that's never a pro. I mean, sorry, not con, but a pro. So that's just never pro that will happen within that. You'll be able to maybe sometimes catch your own swarms. Not 100% guaranteed because sometimes the bees won't go to your location where you set that swarm trap in your backyard or your swarm or your bee apiary, but sometimes it does have the possibility that they will. So, whenever you're baiting a swarm trap, what I usually like to do is a lot of drawn comb. Drawn comb is one of the biggest things that you can do because the bees really like old comb because they can sense that maybe this is like an old hive, like an old hive. So then the bees will say, okay, maybe there's an old hive here. Let's just go ahead and go in here. So that's never pro for using a lot of drawn comb. That's what I was using. It was drawn comb. It's one of the biggest things to use is drawn comb. It's very popular to use drawn comb in your splits, or I mean in your swarm traps to use drawn comb. A lot of old comb, and a lot of drawn comb is key for catching swarms. That's the swarm caught in my that swarm I caught is not from my yard. Yep. See, sometimes what happens is that it's not really from your yard. So what he's saying is, you may have a swarm trap in your backyard or your apiary, but you have a swarm that comes into it that's not even from your yard. That's a possibility that will happen. I've seen that happen before. It happens all the time. It's just that's how everything goes. So that's just kind of what happens sometimes. You got to kind of be able to flow, go along with it, be flexible about it. So maybe if you catch a swarm that you have, then that just happens. Only have foundation, but foundation does work. It will work. But you may have an increased chance if you use drawn comb. I don't really know. It just all depends on the bees and their situation. But I know foundation comb will work. It will 100% work. You just have to kind of you will have to set it with some swarm lure. They have there's different markets for a swarm lure in today's beekeeping world. There's many places you can get swarm lure. So there's like swarm commander, swarm rustler. You can use lemongrass. I know a lot of beekeepers found success in lemongrass. It's something that's popular. Lemongrass, a lot of stuff that you smell has lemongrass built into it, but it has a lot of other ingredients. Because whenever I smell it, it smells just like lemongrass. But the one I have, the swarm lure, doesn't have any lemongrass from what it says. So, but it does smell like lemongrass, which is funny. But it's actually not, it doesn't have any lemongrass. So that's pretty cool. But I don't know what it really is about lemongrass, but lemongrass does, kind of attract swarms. But, Yes, drawn comb is better to use if available. Yep, that's one thing I was about to mention. That if you have available drawn comb, 100% use drawn comb. But if you don't have any drawn comb available right now, you can 100% use foundation. It's fine. You don't have to use drawn comb, but if you have it available, then you can use some drawn comb. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a empty frame with drawn comb. It can't even be foundation with some drawn comb on it. It just has to be kind of drawn out just a little bit if you're going to use drawn comb, or you can use foundation. So, it's just kind of different. But, when I was talking about earlier about our splits, you want to make sure you have a lot of good stuff in there. Because so whenever you make your split, this is what it's basically going to look like. This is an easy nuke. It's very basic, a basic plastic nuke. See, that's what you want right there. You see all those bees? That's exactly what you want. A good nuke. So one thing I wanted to mention real quick, I want to talk about real quick, if you guys will hang on. So whenever you're making a nuke, sometimes people ask, what is the difference? How are you gonna make one to sell? Which one are you gonna make to keep? So that means whenever you make it, how special does it need to be, right? So what I've found is what you're going to do most likely is whenever you have your own, if you're going to make it for your own self, for your own pleasure, you can take frames along with some brood, some eggs, put it in your split. You want a lot of brood. If you're going to make it to sell, you want a lot of brood, and then you want to also put some foundation maybe on the side, but on the side I'd put a little honey. And then once that happens, then what you'll do, leave it for a little bit, put some 1-to-1 sugar water on it, and then after that you should be good to go. Kind of wait a little bit. Once it's ready, you can come back and sell it, give it to a friend of yours. But if you're gonna make it for self-pleasure and keep, you could just do 2 frames of brood and then a few empty foundations and let them slowly over a few weeks or maybe even a month to draw it out. But if you're going to sell it, you might want to make it stronger. So that's just something to think about. So, welcome, Brian. Thanks for joining us tonight. We're talking about swarm trapping. I know for you guys up north in Colorado and Illinois, you probably don't have no swarming or split making to do right now. But for us down south, it's definitely something popular that I wanted to talk about tonight because I'm running solo tonight. Last week we had Seth Hill. If you haven't watched it, go ahead and watch it. But tonight I just wanted to talk about this, have a good topic to talk about. So I think it's something real good to talk about. So what I'm doing right now, I got to set some swarm traps where location is another thing I hear all the time. Where do you want to put your swarm traps? So whenever you're setting out a swarm trap, what you like to do is put them like in an area, a good area, like open. A lot of times people like to do fields. Where I'm putting them is I like to take that. We have like a little creek. This creek goes right down a little creek, and then there's a lot of flowers, wildflowers that bloom each year from where that's located. So that's something good for the bees. So once you can set some swarm traps, we have a lot of pine trees and we have some oak trees. We can set those swarm traps up if we want to put it up in a tall tree. So that's something else you can do along with doing your splits, your regular routine for catching swarms. Because swarms, people like to do swarms location near water. Yep, any place close to water will work. Yep. So you see, closer to the water, I don't know what the reason is, but bees have 2 sources. They have a lot of water to drink because a lot of times in summer, bees need water. Then what will happen is you'll have to go to it and they'll have some wildflowers. So, that's good too. Good evening, Justin. Thanks for joining us. Definitely not splitting or worried about swarming yet. Yep. That's what I was just mentioning is that for people up north like you in Indiana, or other places, you guys probably don't have that swarming right now. So I wouldn't be worried about it for your location. But because I know we have mixed people like Lee that's in here. He's from what do you call it? Louisiana. So I bet he's having swarming like us. He's only like a state or two states away from us, not that far away. So we have Ed, son of one down there. Welcome, Ed. Thanks for joining us. He's down in Alabama, definitely in Alabama, but he's seen some swarms, or I know he had to do some swarm cells, some splitting. So that's something good to know. But we're having some really little cooler weather coming in right now. It's like 65. I think it's like 60 degrees right now. Low is like 40, 45 degrees. So it's gonna be a little chilly. I did put some protein patties on the halves not too long ago, or actually today. I put some protein patties on there, and so they're gonna really like that. It's gonna be something good to kind of energize them up for this cold snap. But it's not gonna be cold for long. It's going to be. Oh, it's only gonna be like for a few days, and we're gonna be done. 2 swarms in 2 days. Well, that's pretty good, Lee. I haven't caught any swarms yet, but I did split a few beehives. Oh, never mind. I did catch a swarm. Sorry, I forget sometimes. So my swarm, I caught a swarm out of a 5-gallon bucket. That was unusual. I don't know if many beekeepers hear of a 5-gallon bucket swarm removal. Bees move into a 5-gallon bucket, but that is really unusual for a 5-gallon bucket. But what happened was the person who had the little bucket accidentally ran into the little side of it. So when the bees started flying out, that's how we discovered it. Called us. We went down there, picked up the swarm. Freebies. Freebies are awesome. They're real good to have some freebies and collect freebies from locally. You can also get them from other. You can get them out of your own backyard. Yep, that is awesome. Nice. 5-gallon bucket. It's unusual. I was thinking, how has anybody ever caught a swarm out of a 5-gallon bucket? Which I'm sure they have. But because a lot of times I see beekeepers, they'll collect swarms just like I did in a barn that maybe they have a 5-gallon bucket that's sitting around outside. You definitely see it, but sometimes you don't really see it all the time. Just all depends, right, on where swarms go, because swarms will go anywhere they can find a crack to. They'll go in a house, they'll go in a building, a deserted building, they'll go in drawers, in a cabinet. They'll go anywhere, right? So bees will go in a 5-gallon bucket, even in an old 5-gallon bucket. It's been there for a while, from what I know. So it's been there for a while. So it was a good catch. A lot of bees in that swarm. So if you haven't saw the video, I suggest you go watch it. That'll be very entertaining to see what the swarm looked like. So update on it. It's doing good right now. I'm feeding it 1-to-1 sugar water for anybody who wasn't here earlier. So what happened was whenever I did that, when I caught the swarm, they had a little comb in there. They didn't have too much comb, just a little bit, enough so I could put it on some frames. But unusual. I don't know how they had that much comb at this time of year. It must have. I think it was just a real early swarm, and I think it wasn't there too long. I bet they moved in there not too long ago. So that's something that me be here. That's why I'm looking out for swarming now in my own backyard, my bee apiary. Gotta watch out for swarming. Definitely, 100% gotta watch out for that, because definitely you can catch some own swarm. Oh, you can catch your own swarms in your own backyard. So that's something that's something that you can take advantage of, because bees right now, like a new could be about $150 to $200 depending on what species or breed you get. Russians are a little more pricey because they're a little more, I guess, say resistant to mites, but not fully. Italian bees are about $150. Carniolan maybe a little low, maybe more like 140 because they're a smaller cluster. Now, whenever you get into genetics of a beehive, because we're talking about that, I like Italian. Just stay up front. Just stay up front. I really like Italians. They're pretty good to me. I really like your early breeding, and I do like my Russians. So Oh, I do want to I do want to mention one thing real quick, that I've been seeing a lot of drones lately. So it's definitely time for us down south to do a few splits. But you just want to kind of keep an eye on the weather. Weather can always be different. Always want to check weather, do all that kind of stuff. Kind of check, make sure it's not going to get freezing, because we have those weird temperatures. I just don't know. One day it'll be 70 degrees, one day it'll be 60 degrees, 20 degrees, maybe even less, maybe even more. So it is just all different depending on where you live. But for us down south, it definitely gets pretty, what's the word, fluctuating. We got a lot of fluctuating temperatures down here in Alabama, southeastern Alabama. a lot of very functional. So we just gotta roll with the flow, keep going. We'll be fine. We just have to ride the waves, right? Just kind of keep on doing. But drones are definitely flying. Yep, they are. I didn't see any going in and out of the house yet, but I did see a lot of drones walking on frames. I mean, my Italian half, they're just loaded down with those drones. That's good. That's good to know that we have a lot of drone population, which is really good. Um, Sometimes that can be bad for some areas, but for us down south, it's fine. It's completely good. We don't really, as long as the temperatures will hold up, we will be fine. It just all depends on how long it takes us to do that. But like, you just gotta check for weather. But other than that, we're good to go. We're catching some own swarms because I really like to catch some swarms. I've only caught a few swarms that I want to talk about real quick. So that was my first, for the time being, success of catching a swarm. Because I've caught a few swarms, but they were like little tiny swarms. They didn't even have any comb. So I did have one swarm that had maybe a little comb, but they're just like, this was weird. There was like this big old tree. It was like a little tree, not too big, and they kind of went down. There was like this little root down here. It had a little hole about this big, and we couldn't stick our hand in there. Um, the swarm I caught last Monday had a lot of drones in it. Yep, that happens. You're gonna find a lot of different kind of drones and stuff. So I have another. This is basically a simple split. I want to pop up here. This is the same exact thing. So I've been reading this a little bit. So the original it had both have feed. I'm just gonna kind of put this in full mode so we can both look at this pretty good for perspective. So the original have. So you see on each side here, you have strong half to be split. Original half will have drawn comb, brood frame, 4 frames of brood, and some more drawn comb, and some honey in the middle, pollen frames. And then you'll kind of split that up same way to new split. So then there you go. It's just, I'm gonna let you look at that chart for a second, and you can just look at it. It's pretty simple. So that's only never basic method, but one I just showed. If none, once the stream's over, you can go back and rewatch it if you want to. I feel free to do that, to rewatch it. But the method I showed, it was real simple, and the Damari method is just kind of switching out frames to point where the bees will think, well, we don't have much room in here. We're a real small swarm, right? Because swarms like maybe about this big, maybe even bigger. So then they go into a tree, hollow tree. They don't have no comb. So that same thing's there. The Damari method. So that's just real basic methods for doing that. I think I got a video coming out soon about preventing swarms. It'll be uploaded soon, so that's gonna be a good video. So watch out for that. But tonight's gonna be all about preventing swarms because preventing swarms. Now, one thing that I think many beekeepers will ask, or people who don't even keep bees, maybe they're about to get into beekeeping, saying, "Why do you want to prevent a swarm?" Well, the main reason is because if we prevent a swarm, we keep those bees to ourselves. So if we can prevent a swarm, that's great. But a lot of times we'll miss a swarm, which is perfectly okay. Don't beat yourself down because you didn't catch a swarm. It's perfectly fine. I've had times where I haven't caught a swarm. Because one time, I'll tell you guys a quick story. I was mowing grass, doing yard work around April, maybe April 22nd, maybe around then, mid April. And then when I was just mowing, and I looked over, saw bees flying everywhere, and I was wondering, what's going on over here? What are they doing? So I went over there and checked them. It seems as if they're swarming. I'm like, uh-oh. And, they went into a tall pine tree, so we could never take them down. They ended up flying away in the next day or two. Because what bees will do is once they're swarming, they will, from where they are at, in the tree, because once they do, they'll kind of form a cluster up in the tree, half of the bees, up in the tree, and then after a day or two, they'll leave. It's just kind of how it goes. But what a lot of people do is if they have a swarm that goes right beside an apiary, because that's what happened with us. Our hive split, or they swarmed and they went into a tree right beside that hive, like less than a few feet away. Actually, I'd say about 50, 20 feet away from the hive. It wasn't that far. So if it was low enough, I could have shook them into a box and it would have been saved. But if they're too tall in a pine tree or any type of tree, it may be hard to get. Because a lot of times what I'll do is before I even catch a swarm from somebody else's house or from a little 5 gallon bucket or wherever I catch it from, I ask them if it's in a tree, how high is it? Because I don't want to go and waste my time if there's a swarm up in a tall oak tree that I can't even get. So that's the first thing I always ask is how high is it, right? And whenever I want to catch a swarm, because we there's a lot of times we'll get a call saying, okay, we've got a swarm over here, can you guys come get it? Because one cool thing about I like to think about that we have a few beekeepers, maybe real local, but we don't really have that many we don't there's not many beekeepers other than myself really in my little town, I must say. So I can so I have a good that's a good opportunity if somebody has bees, I can go down there and remove the bees. So but now what we're talking about is how do you whenever you get done with drawn comb, you put your drawn comb. Now once we're gonna get to this, what box do you use? Well, like I said, I'll use a lot of old equipment. It's good, old nukes, old bottom boards, maybe even old top covers. That will be real good for catching swarms. You know, it doesn't really matter, just depending on what you're doing and all your different things, right? But once you get to that point, what you'll do is you put your so you sometimes beekeepers will use a deep like myself. So what's the difference? So sometimes swords are bigger than others. So if they find a 5 frame nuke and it's not big enough for that size swarm, they're not going to take it. So if you have a 10 frame, you can set a few 5 frame nukes in the area and set some 10 frame nukes. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to set some 10 frame nukes. I mean 10 frame single boxes. Then I'll set some 5 frame nukes. So that's something good. Now, which one's better? Well, I haven't caught a swarm in one of those yet, but from my from whenever I watch people use whatever they can find, really, right? But what I do know is that bees like old comb. That's just something that they really do like. Like my I put a deep with a lot of drawn comb. They have completely went up there and started drawing stuff out in that drawn comb, putting nectar in there. The queen has been up there because she's been laying eggs. I've been seeing eggs in the second deep. So that means there's a queen up there. So so that's gonna be something good to try out some swarm trapping this year. I'm gonna try to get some video of doing some swarm trapping because we're in March. It's March 14th. It's definitely pretty early time, for this stuff to occur. I don't really know really why it's doing it at this time of year because usually it's just a little later in the year when we have these little swarms, but it 100% does happen, So because a lot of times we'll have storms in this time of the year, and you never know, right? It can happen easily. You can have a swarm that swarms on you. You never know it. So that's why whenever what I like to do is I like to look at. I like to go for the hive, make sure I don't see any queen cells, make sure they're not about to swarm. But I wasn't able to get into the bees whenever I ever have swarmed in April. So therefore, I didn't see any queen cells, so I didn't know about the swarm. So that was not my bad, right? So you'll lose a swarmer twice. Man, a lot of times I lose swarms all the time because sometimes I'm busy and I can't catch them and I can't do anything with them. So it's hard to kind of do that and be able to catch them all the time and have the time in order to do so, right? So we just got. I'm trying to make some time because we're homeschooled and all that kind of stuff. So we live out in the country. A lot of woods around us. So it's good. It's good habitat for bees because we have a lot of pine trees, like we were talking about with Seth on our last live. We have a lot of pine trees, and they make a lot of pollen, which is good and bad for some things. Good thing, I really like it for the bees, but I don't really like it for allergies and that kind of stuff. But one thing that breaks allergies is if you eat honey. Once you eat honey, then you kind of get a little honey in there, and that kind of gets the allerginess to pollen that you're eating because we have a lot of pine trees, so it gets bad allergies around here. But the bees already love it. So that's the one thing I wanted to mention. So in our pine trees, what we'll have is lower sections will have about this big. This is the length about this small. They're kind of small. The higher you go, the tippy top of a pine tree, they have about this long of pine or of pollen, and then about this big of around. It's pretty big up high because that's just the top of the tree. But lower you get, the smaller the pollen gets, which doesn't really matter because the bees will take whatever they can get. Right, it doesn't matter how low it is, how tall it is. They'll go into the top of an oak tree if they want to. They'll go as small as they want to collect some pollen. So just really, that's just how it kind of goes with pollen. You know, but this warm weather is definitely, it's starting to stimulate swarming. So like I was talking about earlier, if you weren't watching, so what will happen a lot of times in a hive, whenever you have your full two deep, maybe a single deep, whenever bees or hatch out of brood cells, another bee will come right behind them, that little baby that hatches, and backstore it with nectar and make that into honey. Sometimes they'll do pollen bags there because it just happens, right? It just happens all the time. We just got to kind of deal with it, kind of keep on with it. But it just happens along with that. We deal with that all the time. But I just wanted to welcome everybody again. Welcome DC, the Texas beekeeper, son of one, Ed. Appreciate you guys being here, joining us tonight. We've talked about a lot of like different methods for splitting, and they're basic methods. I wish I could have got some more stuff to show you guys, but I'm going to talk a little bit longer than we'll end it off, because time flies. It's already been 40 minutes I'm spending with you guys, teaching you guys maybe something, but so when earlier we're talking about once you have a swarm, whenever you sell a nuke, usually they'll look like this. A strong nuke will look like that. A lot of 5 frames, 2 frames on the outside will have food, pollen. 3 frames in the middle will have a lot of brood. That's the configuration. We were talking about configurations a while back, and they're fun to get to know about hive configurations. Just each configuration, you have double deep, singles, 5 frame nukes. Sometimes you can do 2 frame nukes. You have mini mating nukes. That's not really a configuration. That's not where bees live. That's just for mating whenever you're raising your own queen. So that's good for that. But now once you get to that, where do you put a swarm trap? That's one thing I want to talk about real quick. Evening, welcome Hell House. Thanks for joining us. Definitely with this time change, it's definitely hard to now get on time to live chat. So appreciate you guys being here. But whenever you talk about how high and how low should your swarm trap be, so I think the bees will usually look for a higher point. So if you have trees or a oak, maybe a small little tree that has a good limb, then you'll kind of be able to sit the swarm trap on that limb and kind of tie it to a tree. So or you can take a board with another board, and then put your swarm trap on top. So you can easily, if you have a swarm, take it off, replace it with another swarm trap. Do that over and over until how many you get. So that happens. So solid tree above 6 feet. Yep, that's something that I think is good. A solid good tree. You don't really want like a bad tree. You want a good tree, like a pine tree. As long as it is about this round, because that's how big our pine trees are. They'll get bigger in the near future. But as long as you have a big limb about this big, that should be good to go for your swarm trap. But if you're going to set it on the ground, because, sometimes you can set them on the ground. I don't know if you really should. I don't know how effective that will be. But I know a lot of beekeepers will. But, that happens all the time. But that's your solid split. Doing things, all like that. But, just happens. Swarming, it is, unbelievable right now. I can't believe how many beekeepers I'm seeing, like Mr. Ed, people down in Louisiana, maybe some people in Texas, seeing swarming. It's just something that's been going on. And, it's really something that you really need to consider to start catching your own swarms. And then catch your swarms, and there you go. You got yourself a freebies, because you never know what you'll end up with. So, okay. we got a question here. What is your opinion about this? I want to zip tie some QMP onto lower limbs of trees quick and around my acres. I want to catch them right away. Yep, I think that'll work. Lower on my 5 acres. 5 acres is a good place to put some storm traps. We have 40 acres. So what I do is 6 foot, 4 foot, 5 foot. Really doesn't matter. But once you want to catch them right away, but on to lower limbs. But you definitely could do that. Very well. You very well could. Okay, thanks. I wasn't really understanding the question. Queen mandibular pheromone. That's something that you can do. So if you have a swarm trap, that's a good topic, real quick. If you have a swarm trap, you could put some kind of queen, mandibular pheromones there, and that would work too. So yeah, but I think that's a good idea. You can definitely do that. It's 100%. You definitely could do that. I just wasn't understanding that for sometimes whenever you do slower things, I can't really understand it. But but you definitely could do that. It's something you really do. It could increase your chances to zip tying on small limbs. Like if you want to zip tie them, I'd say about this big. All you can do them on any tree. It doesn't have to be right where you're catching swarms at. It can just be on whatever you have. You put them on a little limb, kind of zip tie that little queen mandibular pheromone. You can do that 100%. Definitely could. So Leah's caught 2 squirrels. Will try to keep mine in the hive. Yep, that's right. That's definitely something that you're gonna. Sometimes that's what I was talking about here. The Mari method. I'll bring it back up. Why not? I was talking about it earlier. If you have not seen it, but we'll just kind of re-explain it. The Mari method is basically switching out frames, removing queen from a lot of her brood, right? So then once you have that lower box of queen excluder, queen can't go up into the other bees. And I was talking about earlier, you could use double deeps instead. So if you haven't, went back and saw that part, I really do suggest you look at that little clip. Maybe I'll edit it down and upload it as a video. Who knows? So many things I could do with that. But swarms definitely. And there's a lot more things, and we're going to talk about that more over the next few weeks. A lot more things, because sometimes I'm not always able to get a guest in here. Because a lot of times I'm gonna have a lot more guests now. So many bet many beekeepers want to know whatever guests I have in mind to get on here on the show, because we've been doing these for about 5 months now, almost half a month. Isn't that something? It's been something good. We only missed a handful of these kind of live shows. But have you caught a swarm, Grayson? Actually, I just caught a swarm last week. It was in a 5-gallon bucket. It was a good catch. So if you haven't saw the video, I suggest you go watch it. It's called the 5-gallon bucket swarm removal, because I caught it from a swarm. I actually caught it from a 5-gallon bucket. It was really something amazing that I was wondering, has anybody ever found a swarm from a 5-gallon bucket? So therefore I've caught some other swarms though. A lot of them, but they just never did well for some weird reason. Maybe they're just too small. Hello, Tim. Welcome. They were. Saw a video, but it looked like it had been there for a while. It could have been. It might have been there for a while. We thought it was a this year swarm, but it might have not been. It could, so I'd clarify that as a cutout, a mini cutout. That's if somebody else was Okay. Yep. Don't think that's a good idea. The queen bee. Don't think bees will have a queen. Yep, that might something that thinking about. So there's some pros and cons. We'll go back to that subject of queen mandibular pheromones, if that's what you're talking about, James. But a lot of times, some beekeepers, sometimes it's just all different. Sometimes bees will sense to that and say, okay, let's go over here. So I think in certain cases it will be good. So, but I've never done that before, so I can't really give you a guarantee way of doing that. But yep, Fred Dunn does have a good video on that, so you could So you could definitely, do that. So, you know, so just watch some experienced beekeepers on the zip tie a queen mandibular pheromones, and then you'll be set to go and catch your own swarms. That's something exciting to do. I'm real excited for catching more swarms because, like I was talking about earlier, I'm basically the only beekeeper around in my area, my local area, real local. But we have some beekeepers within like a 30-mile radius. But that just happens. Thanks for hopping on, Brian. See you later. We're gonna end off here. It's already been 50 minutes, 55 minutes. So it's funny how this stuff goes through really fast. Really, really, really fast. But I really love doing them and really share what I know because that's what I'm kind of doing right now. So what I do is I'll set my swarm traps out here soon. Not just yet. I haven't set on any swarm traps just yet, just because I've been real busy doing other things, getting ready for stuff, getting some 1 gallon buckets for feeding. That's one thing I'll quickly talk about before you end off. Whenever you're kind of looking toward that kind of thing about catching a swarm, right whenever you catch a swarm, you definitely do want to, but what you'll do is, yeah, but that's something that sometime I'm going to set up some swarm traps. But feeding, whenever you get a swarm, you want to make sure you will feed 1-to-1 sugar water. Let's see. Yep, yep. As long as you have a. Okay, here we go. Got a good question. I want to talk about this real quick. So what he'll have Paul's asking, what are your expansion plans this season, Grayson? All right, that's something good, and something that I want to answer real quick. But my plans are about 10 hives, maybe a little more, depending on how much bees I get. If I get 5 more swarms, I can get up to 10. Because if I include my queenless hives, my swarms, my splits, I have 7 hives. Not including that, I have about 4 hives. Not including all that. So that's not bad. So I did split some of them. So it's a good start to things. Start out with everything. Do all that kind of stuff. So, my expansion plans are about 10 hives. I do got to get more sugar. I have some sugar I'm going to, start feeding them. I got some 1 gallon bucket lids from Better Bee on the way. It's gonna be fun to do. So that's gonna be something fun to try out and do some things like that, swarm trapping and feeding 1-to-1 sugar water. Now earlier I was talking about 1-to-1 sugar water, for simulating queen. So whenever you catch a swarm, this relates to swarming real quick. So when you catch a swarm, you definitely want to put 1-to-1 sugar water on it. So that will stimulate the queen to lay more eggs. So then the queen will lay more eggs. That's some more bees. Your swarm will definitely grow much more faster. You could feed 2-to-1, but I highly recommend 1-to-1 sugar water. I know a lot of beekeepers right now will do really light syrup, just because that's just kind of sometimes really do it. But it's just kind of how it really goes to do swarm trapping and feeding a little bit 1-to-1. I know a lot of beekeepers will feed a little more less like low syrup. I'd say that's a little bit light sugar syrup. So here you go. I'm trying to think out how a queen would be to draw it to it. But to catch worker bees and add a queen cell to them might work. Yep, that might work as well. So if you have a queen that to draw on, so this is one thing I do want to mention with the queen pheromone. So if you have a swarm that has a queen, you may not want to use those queen pheromones or that kind of stuff that you're asking. But what I would highly recommend is once you go to that, I would say that you probably want to put some kind of swarm lure. Swarm lure. I know there's many suppliers for swarm lure nowadays. You definitely can get it from many different sources. I don't know, Swarm Commander, Swarm Rustler, so many more different ones. I have Swarm Rustler. I've tried it out once. I had to use the nuke box and the drawn cone for some other stuff, so I don't have the nuke box out anymore. But okay, here we go. Another question. So you're going from bag feeder to bucket feeders. Yep. So okay, here it is. So what I was feeding was like bag with some sugar water, but that did okay. I was feeding like the main reason for that is I had like a 8 ounce jar. My swarm took that down within a few hours. It was just insane how fast they took that down. So, I have to go out there at least twice a day to feed them. So I was thinking that maybe 1 gallon buckets may be able to, bucket feeders will be simpler and it'll last me a week, right? So yep, I am going from bag feeders to bucket feeders. That's my plan. I'm hoping to do some video of that to talk about some bucket feeders, what I'm going to be doing. I got some with the 40 micron screen, real small, a few hairs actually. So it's a real small screen, which once you turn it upside down, that vacuum up top will make it, do that. Alrighty, I'm gonna try it. I'll let you know how it turns out. Yep, definitely let us know how it turns out. Maybe in future live stream, let us know how that queen pheromone will work. So we're gonna see. That'll be something cool to test out. Can't wait to see the results for that. Um, but we're already here at an hour. I better go ahead and end it off here. Because gotta go eat supper and stuff like that. But thank you guys for watching. I appreciate you. If you would, please subscribe, maybe share the video. If you know like maybe a beekeeper, a beginner beekeeper, this may be a lot of information for them. So if you know a more non-experienced beekeeper, maybe a beginner beekeeper, please share it to them. That'll be very good. Thank you. But without further ado, thank you guys for watching. I appreciate you guys, and we'll catch you on the next video. Thank y'all.